Welcome to episode 197 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro Podcast, recorded live September 18th, 2020. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a different topic or news and how it relates to you. For this show, we interview someone who recently purchased a Microsoft Duo device and has been using it as his primary device for the last week or so. We get his thoughts on the device as a whole, the hardware, the software, how it stacks up to other devices he's used, as well as how he sees this device fitting into his daily work life, some of the advantages he sees to it and the disadvantages, and kind of where he sees the sweet spot of the Microsoft Duo fitting into a people's collection of devices that they own and use on a regular basis. So let's dive into the interview.
Hit the button again.
I hit the button again. And, Scott, we have a guest with us today. We roped Dan Patrick into joining us on the podcast. After an article he wrote, we were like, maybe we should get Dan to talk because he got suckered into buying something by Microsoft. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he wanted it. We're going to find out. So, Dan, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and possibly why we got you on the podcast?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. Pretty cool to be on with you guys. Love listening to your show. So my name is Dan Patrick. I'm an Azure MVP and have been doing cloud and IT work for a very long time. We'll not even go into that, right? I worked at Microsoft for a long time, so I will date myself here. I started working for Microsoft a couple months before Windows 98 shipped. Whoa.
I won't tell you how old I was when Windows 98 shipped or what I was doing when Windows 98 shipped.
Okay, please don't. But so I was at Microsoft for, I don't know, close to 15 years, something like that. And ever since then, I've worked in consulting and startups and did a lot of Azure training. And now I'm a consultant and trainer. So I spend all of my time either teaching, writing, or deploying stuff to the cloud. And my background's really infrastructure, right? Infrastructure, networking, that sort of thing. Virtualization. So like I have certifications in like VMware, Citrix, things like that. But been doing Azure full time probably since about 2015. So like to do that. And yeah, I bought a Surface Duo. Here it is.
Oh, all right. So this is going to be interesting because we're going to record the video. So if you want to go look at some of this stuff, you're going to have to go find our podcast on YouTube. If you want to hear it, you can just listen to the normal podcast. So we'll try to describe stuff and maybe show some stuff too and all of that. So.
But I think the other thing we can do, you mentioned Dan wrote a couple articles on Build 5.9s about this.
Yes.
So he does have some videos and screenshots and all that good stuff out there as well. He actually wrote 2 articles so far about it. We'll see if we can eke a third one out.
Wow. So does this mean you really like this Duo? Like, I think you got it like day one, didn't you? Did you have this pre-ordered and watching out the window for FedEx?
Yeah, so Chris Peachman and I is another Azure MVP. He started Build Azure, which became Build 5.9s, and sort of roped me into writing articles with him, and I've been doing that for the last couple of years. And we were talking about some of the cool new tech that's coming up, of course, like Ignite's next week, so we have a lot of articles about that. And I was saying, well, there's a Duo coming out, right? I'm sure people will be interested in that. So we sort of did like a virtual rock, paper, scissors to figure out who had to spend the money to buy it. And I lost, of course. So I paid the money and bought the Duo. And I have to be honest with you, I'm pleasantly surprised by it because I'm kind of an Android hater. Even though I love Linux and I love things like Android bothers me. I'm one of these people that always I have an iPhone and my family's all iPhone Max, iPads, and then I get sick of being on the same thing. So then I go and buy some Samsung device that I hate for like a year and can't wait to get to my next upgrade, right? To go back to having an iPhone. But I've gone through successes of iPhone 6, iPhone X. I haven't bought a Pro. So the phone that I have that I carry, my I have iPhone XS Max, right? Sort of the
Okay.
big one, last gen. So I'm not too too crazy into getting something new, but I bought this thing and I'm presently surprised, right? I wrote a couple articles, did some comparisons to it, and man, if you live the Office 365 lifestyle, which is what I said in the article, this is the phone for you. I think I really believe that.
So you're coming at this too from an iPhone. Like you said, you were on the iPhone XS before, and you've been on some Android phones.
Yep.
Yeah, so the size is one thing that always interested me. I have never had a Max because of my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So initial, like even before you turned it on, you pull the Duo out of your pocket, or you pull the Duo out of the box, you have the iPhone in your hand. What was kind of that initial reaction when you felt the Duo compared to having the iPhone maybe in your other hand or holding the iPhone?
Well, the first thing is that the weight is effectively the same. Okay, so the one thing you have to realize with the Duo is it just has this little bumper on it, if you can see that, and they ship it in the box.
So you put you threw the adhesive bumper on there.
Threw the adhesive bumper on there, and it comes in the box. And they've since the ship date, a few companies have come out with them, and they've got like different colors. Like this one's white, which is kind of the color of the phone. But the feel in your hand, and the feel of like an iPhone like this with just a regular, what I would describe as a regular case, right? I don't have like a big OtterBox case or something.
Right.
The feel is effectively the same. I can't. I was expecting like iPad Mini in my hand, or something, right?
Yep.
Like I was expecting like, here's my iPad Pro. I was expecting this kind of bulky feeling, and
Okay.
no way. I mean, look at the difference, right? Like it's totally not that experience at all. And so I was like, wow, this feels pretty good in my hand. And then the other thing is, what I was worried about was the thickness, like how thick it feels.
Yep.
But the thing is with the two screens, it's so thin, like, razor thin, right?
Yeah, you're
really
less
thin.
than 5 millimeters, and I think that's a good way to think about it. Like if you happen to have, if you're in that Apple ecosystem, which we all are, and you have that iPad Pro, pull your iPad Pro out, look at how thin that device is, and when the Duo is closed on both sides, it's still thinner than the iPad Pro.
Yeah, I mean, here you go, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So it feels like, and I said this in the article, it feels like a Mac size phone. In your pockets, to put it in my pockets, like I have shorts on, which obviously you can't see this right now, but in my pocket, no difference.
It doesn't.
Right? I mean, it does not feel, it feels the same. It's just when you open it up, you have this magic.
Right, where you get
screens.
Then the two screens next to each other.
Now, and then the other thing is that when you fold it over, because this is the call mode, right? Where you screen on the back, screen on the front. That experience again is the same. Okay.
So, with that experience, since we're talking about the phone experience and it flipped and the size of it, like when I do look at it, the one thing I notice is that it's wider than like the phone XS. Do you tend to talk on it holding it up to your head, or are you one of those guys that always uses a headset, or how does that feel like in the phone mode if you're going to hold it and talk on the phone, or don't you even know because you just always use headsets?
Who uses a smartphone as a phone? That's
okay.
So yeah, like in a way, I think that what Seth said just really right. I mean, listen, I probably only had like 3 phone conversations on the thing. I'm not even kidding. And it feels fine in your hand. It doesn't feel any bigger or bulkier than it is. I think that in the kind of the COVID age where we're just all at home, I usually have a headset on, and that's really the way that I have been using it. So I it's not uncomfortable. I mean, like I've been out, like go to dinner or something like that. Someone calls me, and you grab it, you use it. It does feel a little big in your hand from here to here, right?
Okay. Yeah, and that's where it looks the biggest to me when you compare it to other phones.
Yeah.
Is that
this thing feels the same way? I mean, like these plus size, phones that we've had forever. I still can't reach all the way across with my thumb, on the big iPhone, and I can't
Yep.
do the same thing here. I think that one thing that I've noticed in using it is that because I can use this book mode and that feels kind of good in both hands, that I strangely enough tend to keep it like this when I don't need to, right?
Interesting.
Like imagine you've got like Facebook up or something like that, where really that's a one-handed experience of scrolling with your thumb, right? As
Yep.
we're all doing, or Instagram or something, or a news app. For some reason, I find myself, if I'm sitting on the couch or something, I'm like this. So I'm utilizing both of the screens and doing that when I don't need to. And actually, even last night, I was, I had like a newspaper app up. I don't know if you can see that very well, but
Yep.
but I had nothing on the other screen. I'm like, well, that's kind of silly. So I did end up folding it and use it just with one screen. So I think I'm still learning, like, the best ways to use it. But
It's because you're scrolling Facebook while you're on a phone call, right? That's why you have it open,
yeah,
so you can have your phone call up and mute and unmute while you're looking at Facebook or Twitter on the other screen.
well, you bring up a great point, because I will tell you, one of the first experiences that I found, okay, was having a video app on one screen, okay, of some sort, and having either web browser where I'm reading something, or email or Twitter, or on another screen. So, I've got like Spectrum for my TV. There's a nice Spectrum app. I can stream in the house, no problem. So, I might have like a newspaper app up on one screen, and then I've got, streaming video on the other screen while I'm, drinking a cup of coffee, right? And, you get this kind of experience where we've got the video. Let me turn it down so it doesn't talk, right? But I've got, sort of video here, right? That's live while I'm reading about the U.S. government banning TikTok or something on the other screen, right? But it's just like, sort of a multimedia, right? It feels very Harry Potter or something almost, right? Where I'm, everything is alive that I'm looking at instead of flat.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool. And the other nice thing is if I get interested in the video, I could just take that video, slide it in the middle, and then it becomes one big screen.
Got it. And then the full. So when it's one big screen like that, does the bezel, because when you're looking at it and you have a video, like the bezel down the middle, because of how they made this, is obvious. I'm guessing that one of those things, like once you start watching, you tend to just not notice it. Is it? Or does it distract you?
I will tell you. So when you're watching something like this, it's not distracting. Okay.
Okay.
If you're watching it, here it is right here. Here's a video. So here's our president, right? You see how he's centered in the screen, which they're going to do, right?
Yep. But it
on
like
an interview.
Like the middle of his face is missing.
Yeah, he's like, it's sort of like this. It's like, hi guys, how are you, right? So it is a little distracting when you get that experience, like an interview. But most other videos, it's not so distracting. I mean, listen, it's a phone. Right?
I mean, it's highly contextual too, right? If you're going to browse YouTube versus maybe you want to sit down on Netflix or Disney Plus and watch a movie, those are very different experiences. I'm also like, I'd love to hear your kind of take on the modality that you mentioned there with potentially using it as not only a consumption device, but also a productivity device. Like when I think about maybe my iPhone or my iPad, they have very distinct uses for me, right? I'm going to go grab one to do one thing. And I find myself like getting distracted very easily on my iPad with, dual screen. If I have YouTube and, Teams up on the other side, like I'm definitely paying more attention to, YouTube than Teams and things like that. But it seems like it's a little bit more focused just because it's in that ecosystem and it's kind of that right size to like fit in the palm of your hand and put it front and center for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, again, this kind of goes back to my assertion that it's an Office 365 mobile machine, right? Probably better suited for consuming other people's content while interacting with them, which is very COVID, right? So, having Teams on one side and having someone else's, like full PowerPoint up, where you can get that context, which the other side of that's a little weird because, okay, well, COVID, we're all at home. I'm probably on my PC anyway. So it's a little weird because the thing that it does really well, you almost would think would be awesome, like in an airport lounge or something, when you don't want to get your MacBook out or you don't want to, something like that. But you have the two screens. With an iPad, again, still, you're only going to have one or the other, right? I mean, even the big iPad. So I think that it's a really good consumption device, more so than a creation device. The one area possibly could be email, right? Like, pretty easy to send emails. It's pretty nice. I really kind of like the Barbie laptop mode is what I call it, right? Where, you're sort of, you're sort of like this. And it's really nice too. I find myself sort of setting that on the couch in front of me, like, next to me. It's like a mini laptop. The hand typing is a little quirky. You're two thumbing it a little bit, but it's fine. I mean, for texting with people, like last night I was sitting on the couch. I had a Teams conversation going on one window, and I had a Slack conversation going on another window. And this is very typical for me because inside of Solliance, the consulting firm I work for, we all use Slack, but all of our clients are using Teams, right? So, I was like on both edges here with the same client conversation going on. So, it's a great device for that. And the other thing that's nice is it's really easy access to all of the docs, right? So, anything that you've opened, shared, someone shared it to a team site, somebody, we're working on a spreadsheet, you've got a channel, there's an Office app, and you'll see the docs that you've, kind of recently used in Office. You'll see them right there. And that part works great. Again, you just hit something, boom, Excel comes up. So you could make minor tweaks. I don't think you're going to be writing macros, in Excel. Okay. Yep. I mean, you're not going to be creating giant spreadsheets, but you might be updating something. I mean, I certainly could see someone that, they have kind of a generic status report spreadsheet or something. You tweak a few values, put a few values in, and send something off. Absolutely. I could see that.
So from a creation device, it's a lot more like you would on just a normal phone in terms of the whole typing experience. You're not going to be writing long, lengthy emails or documents or anything like that.
Well, I say that
easily.
I say that as a single device, meaning I only have this with me. Okay. But if you go and look on the web, there's a lot of people, that Microsoft has a cutesy little folding keyboard. Have you seen that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like you could use you could put this table tent in front of you. Okay. You could put a keyboard in front of it, and you can run a mouse on Android now, right? So yeah, you could write code. You could write email. Like you could be fully functional.
Got it.
If you really had to, okay? Like FEMA style somewhere, right? I mean,
I think there's definitely people that have done that, right? They've gone out and fired up, GitHub code spaces and done the keyboard, the mouse, and kind of brought it all together. So in a pinch, yes, you could get there. I live this dream of a life where I would love to do that, like be able to work off a single device sometimes, but that's not the reality. You always come crashing back to earth, but like you said, as in a pinch, like why not?
Yeah, and I think that we're a lot closer, right? Like I could see a day where when the processors catch up, when RAM catches up, right, where this really could effectively be my laptop, right? Like if I could take this USB-C, or even preferably later, just wirelessly, it's charging and it lights up two 27-inch monitors, a keyboard, and a mouse. There's not really something that's stopping you from doing that aside from just progress, right? I mean, I think that we could get there. I think that we could get there. So and, imagine like a work environment too, where, co-working and things like that has really become a huge thing these days, especially now with companies just totally backing off their corporate infrastructure. You've got sort of a co-working space where I could have something as small as this, check into a little cube, connect this, and I have a full work, everything for me. I mean, that's pretty cool, especially with everything in the cloud these days. So
and that's one thing I was going to say, Dan, like we talk about the single device, and you and I have actually done some projects together, and we're working on one right now with Windows Virtual Desktop. And you think about a device like that, and really it doesn't necessarily have to have a massive amount of computing power if you get back to the whole, it's kind of funny, you get back to the whole mainframe, everybody logs into just a single server on the back end or a pool of servers.
Yep.
But as long as it can drive that keyboard, the mouse, and a couple displays, and you have access to remote into one of those servers or one of those virtual desktop environments, and you just work off of that. All your applications, all your files, everything's right up there. It doesn't necessarily need the computing power of a laptop.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I've found is that you tend to run into the video issues. Like, it just doesn't scale to a good resolution when you plug those devices into big monitors.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. I think that the idea of a Windows Virtual Desktop, sort of an RDP-ish session, the really interesting things that have gone on with Windows 10 multi-session, with the Teams integration and all that sort of thing, I think you're right. I mean, even from home, can you imagine not having to give laptops to people at home? Right.
That'd be great. I've bought a bunch of them this year for my kids to be remote. It's it's an expensive endeavor. I might as well have bought them phones.
Yeah, and well, that's the other thing. At some point, let's talk about the price, right? Because it's as expensive as a laptop, right? I think that as a consumer, I certainly felt like, and I think I even said this in the article, that there was a trade-off here of, instead of buying one of my kids a new MacBook, I bought this. And wow, that's a pretty hefty investment. And so to have an expectation that it could also be another device that's, sort of fully capable, I think that expectation will become more real, right? It certainly was for me when I pulled the trigger on buying this thing. So
right, because if that could be a single device, you look at a MacBook, but you're still buying your kids a phone too. You're spending maybe $2,500, $2,000. That price doesn't become as unreal if it could be a single device.
Yeah, and I think that, listen, I don't know much about just other than generically like the digital divide and things like that, but, there is a large number of people in this world that $2,000 is not an approachable number to try to teach your children, right? So, but a lot of kids have phones. So, what's made those really expensive phones approachable is the telecom and kind of ecosystem of, $40, $50 a month, right? Like, that's approachable. A parent would probably say, yeah, I'll find $50 a month to be able to teach my kids. And so if you could have a device that did that, and then the schools had the infrastructure, like the project we're working on is Windows Virtual Desktop for high schools, right? That's what the project we're working on together. If you had those things tied together, wow, that's pretty amazing. And what makes all that capability work is, the hardware, the networking infrastructure, but then also the cloud, right? Because it's all, backed by a public cloud. So pretty cool stuff.
Right. So going to the price, you've been using it for a week now. You said this or a laptop. Scott and I have talked a little bit when it was announced. We feel like the $1,500 isn't outrageous for the form factor. Like, you look at some of the other foldables that are, it's the same ballpark, $1,500 to $2,000. But this hardware, Microsoft announced this a year ago, and we feel like the hardware might not justify the price. The form factor, the size is right in line, but the hardware's old. What are your thoughts after spending $1,500, after spending a week with it? Do you feel like that's a good price? Does it still feel expensive? Like, do you notice that the hardware does seem older than some of the newer ones? So is it worth the $1,500 after you've been using it? You feel like?
Yeah. So a couple of questions there, right? I think that, first of all, is it worth it? Yes, if Office 365 is your world. Okay. Yes. If Office 365 is not your world, I don't know. Okay. Would I buy this because of what I do as opposed to like a Samsung phone for that price? Yes. Okay. Because it gives me Outlook and it gives me all these things that I actually do use. So I think that for like the decision of Samsung versus, or, maybe even LG or something, although some of the LG phones are a lot cheaper. I think that there is enough value here to justify the price. Now, is the hardware, sort of worth that money? if you just only looked at that one data point, like, this is slower processor than that. Like if you spec sheet it out, then you'll go, slower processor, this and that, right? You'll definitely have some spec sheet envy, okay? But the screens are amazing. I have never seen it lag. I've never felt like what's going on here. I think that the bigger problems with this sort of first generation, and it did open up with one update that was only like 275 meg, so it was pretty fast.
Okay.
But the user interface is clunky still, and what I mean by that is that the gestures, the flicking, sort of like all of the options that you can do, like, flick it in the middle, flick it to the side, that stuff needs work still. And so, listen, one of the things I always say is shipping is a feature. You got to ship something or else you'll never ship, right?
Yep.
And I would imagine that there's probably a team of people feverishly working on launcher bugs, right? Because there's probably a lot of them. But at the end of the day, I think that it's a good device. When it comes to the high-end devices, it's worth buying, especially, like I said, if you spend all your day in Teams, all your day in Outlook, all your day on, in that kind of universe, that's where you'll really see the value. The one place where it's horrible, okay, the camera, I mean, like the camera is bad. Both of my wife loves her iPhone Pro. My daughters, they all take pictures, videos, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And my youngest, who's almost 11, picked it up, and she was really excited about the dual screen. She wanted to check it out. The first thing she did was open up the camera, put it in selfie mode, and she went, "Ugh, I'm ugly." She's like, I think she said, "I don't even think the filters would help this camera." Right. So.
Yeah. I think they've had, Panos has been on a couple interviews and kind of talked about that. They definitely targeted, that Microsoft 365, Office 365 lifestyle, right? Of let's put it's an 11 megapixel camera, but it is 1080p in a Teams call.
Yeah.
And, that's the target. And I think that's one of those spec sheet things that makes it hard for people when, the best camera is the one you have on you, right? We've said that for years with iPhones and, especially like high-end Samsung devices as they get better and better and better at not just, the lenses that go into these things, the actual kit, but also like computational photography. Microsoft isn't there. That's early days for all of that stuff. I think it'll be really interesting to see where it goes in 6 months. So not only what are the launcher bugs and other things that get fixed, but also where does ultimately that collaboration between Microsoft and Google go? Because this required a pretty big collab there as well. Like it's not just Microsoft saying we're going to use Android and write a custom launcher. They needed Android to support that form factor and get all that lined up. So, does this bring to bear a new segment of devices where, having that dual screen with the split down the middle is the thing? Where does Google go with that and potentially look at it? That'll be like pretty telling to see where all that goes. And then also how quick they can rev on some of this stuff. So honestly, I think the specs they lock themselves into a design. Like you talk about how svelte it is, right? Like it's sleek, but it's sleek and you can't make last minute decisions about things like, oh, I want to be on the latest Snapdragon processor because Qualcomm requires that you put a 5G chip in there and now there's no room for the chip or wireless. How are you going to add Qi charging? Which side does it go on and how much bulk does it add or things like that? So if they can both do software updates from the Microsoft side and you see Google do that, which means Microsoft's got to keep up as well because it ships with Android 10 and now 11's out. So let's see how quick they can get that out the door. And then, can they get on like a yearly release cycle for hardware and stick with it so it doesn't become Windows Phone again?
Yeah. Well, and I think you're dead on in your analysis, right? And my feeling of using the device aligns with that. What you said there about the best phone is the best camera is the one that's on you, right? I would have no trouble with this camera taking a picture of a whiteboard where I had a meeting with a client, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not like it's messed up. It's like, it's not up to my 11-year-old's TikTok standards, okay? But that's not what this device, I think, is really for. So I think that you're right on there.
Right. Well, and Scott and I mentioned it, and I think you kind of have affirmed it that the market for something like the Duo isn't necessarily the consumer market, the high school student market. They're going after the business professionals, the executives that, like you said, they're always on Teams meetings. They're always in office. They're never at their desk. They want something they can throw in their pocket post COVID where they can have this on a plane. They can take it to conferences. They can take it as they travel and be more productive than maybe they would on something like an iPhone. Without having, again, it's a smaller form factor, smaller device, and maybe increased productivity on that smaller device.
Yeah, it definitely delivers on that experience, right? So the appearance that I'm, interacting with my peers in the exact same way if I was on my laptop on a PC with three 27-inch monitors, or on this phone. If I'm on a Teams call and I'm looking at or reading my email and responding, that experience I think is fantastic. And you're right. I mean, that's who it's for, right? This is not a TikTok making machine, right? This is a real. We used to call them knowledge workers. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Do you remember that phrase, right? Like, I think like in the 2000s, right? But that's what it is. It's, people that are in Excel, people that are in Word, people that are in email. In the article, I said that this device makes me want to read my email again, which is kind of funny, but it's true. The experience is so great, where you've got kind of the same feel that you have Outlook on a PC of, sort of here's all the messages and then here's a preview pane. If I click on something, the device knows how to move Outlook out of the way, show me the web browser. It's a fantastic experience. So I think it definitely delivers on that.
Got it.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep. I like it. I think that it's worth it. The other thing, can I tell you something that's interesting that seems retro, but in the age of COVID delivers? Are you ready for this?
There's
Absolutely.
a Game Boy emulator for it.
Okay,
yes,
so
Sega. No, it was Sega. Sega had a similar form factor. Okay. Anyways.
So I messed up because I was going to do this. I was going to have a mask and try to use Face ID to open my iPhone and go, oh man, I have to use my PIN, right?
Yep.
Well, the fingerprint's gone on this device, right? And so the fingerprint reemerges on the side there. Can you see the little notch?
Oh, I do see the notch there.
Everybody complains about the notch on the iPhone, right, at the top of the video. But, that's how you unlock this phone, okay? So if I'm on the phone with my thumbprint there, that's how I unlock it. Way better experience when you're out in public and you've got that mask on, right? So an interesting retrograde going back to the fingerprint, and in our new universe, it delivers for you, right? So kind of.
Well, and that's an interesting placement because I've seen like the Google Nexus, they had the fingerprint reader on the back, which was kind of cool because you tended to put a finger on the back and unlock it.
Yeah.
iPhone, it was on the front with a thumb, but I think I kind of like it like right in the middle on the side there, especially with the form factor of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. And by the way, that's where all the buttons are. So right next to that is the power button and then the volume rocker, right?
Okay. So everything is on that one.
It's on that one side.
Half.
Yeah. And actually, even the SIM is buried underneath. There's a little thing you can pop open and get to the SIM if you want to.
Okay.
That was one gripe I had too. It doesn't use the mini SIM or the eSIM or whatever they call that. It's got the old school SIM size.
The full size?
Really?
Or like whatever the old half size was before they went to mini. So you need the adapter tray.
Yeah. I don't know where. I don't have it handy. I should have thought of it, but yeah. So I was a little annoyed by that because that was my other dig on this. I'm a real outdoorsy person, right? Because I sit in front of a computer all day, and as soon as I'm done with that, like I like to go fishing. I have a boat. I'm always outside, like because I'm inside so much. The minute I can get out of being in front of a monitor, I do it. And this will never go on my boat. Okay. I mean, this is definitely a desk queen or something, as they would say, right? Like it doesn't feel flimsy at all. I mean, trust me, it's very high end, nice device. But man, like I feel like I could drop my iPhone these days, because I have, like, literally in the ocean and dove down and got it, and it would survive. And so that means for me, I need two phones, right? Like, and I can't pop the SIM in and out. So that's a drag. And then, you've kind of got the whole, I've been blue for a long time in iMessage, and now I'm green.
You're a green
no,
bubble.
I'm green. So I mean, there's still a couple of those things. And so yeah, so again, that reaffirms, rich people phone, right? Like, where, having two phones just, I mean, for people like us, we're nerdy. All we do is sit in front of computers all day. But like the average person, if they wanted to go out, on a boat or on a bike ride, I mean, I can't imagine going mountain biking with this in my pocket.
Yeah, putting it on like a RAM mount on the handlebars or something would be.
I mean, you have a heck of a GPS screen, right? Like, to look at. But so I think that, again, it is a device that is built for productivity. You would have to leave it behind to go for a jog, which, that's probably a stretch for a lot of people, right? Because I mean, the people that are full on iPhone and the other thing is that I'm also lamenting, here's my Apple Watch, right? Like, okay, what do I do with this now? And I like my Apple Watch, so I guess I need to get like
an Android
watch. Is there a good Android watch? I don't know. I've never even looked, right? So. A couple other little quirks.
That's a big debatable thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. A couple little quirky things that I've noticed. It doesn't. It seems to have some issues with Bluetooth. Not bad, and they might be software tweakable, maybe. But like, I'm one of these people that I use Bose, noise canceling, and I like to just leave my phone like in my office, listening to meetings, wandering off, get a cup of coffee or something in my house. I lose the Duo, where I get sort of little jitter from Bluetooth way sooner than I do with an iPhone. So maybe that's software, don't know. And then it also, if I have multiple devices, like a lot of times, like I've got my Bose connected to my main machine that I use for me, as well as to my phone. So if somebody calls me on Slack or Teams on my main PC, or they call my phone, I can answer either one. For some reason, when I answer, on the main PC, but I'm like maybe listening to music from the Duo for some reason or whatever, it like doesn't come back. So
that sounds like something in the software stack, like implementation.
So I mean, I'm sure they'll find bugs and things like that, but I mean, it's fine. The only other experience that I would highlight was, man, it was weird setting up. I mean,
it sounded like it was a bit of a chore.
Well, it did.
It was a
chore.
Like
a Google based on your article, it's like a Google Microsoft device, and even the software that comes installed on it, you have like two full productivity suites from both of them on there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, like I think I said in the article, it just shows that Microsoft lost, right? Like, so I had to, start it up, and immediately I had to put in my Gmail, right? Right after seeing the Microsoft logo and buying a Microsoft phone. Well, that was bizarre.
Welcome to the collaboration.
Yeah, I guess so. And then I had to choose my Microsoft ID, which, have you seen the meme with the guy who's like point one or point the other and he's sweating, like, okay, which Microsoft ID do I choose? Because I have like 12,
Yeah, are you doing your personal one, your work one? What's the
your other work one, your other work one, your other work one?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, that's a great question, because I literally sweated it out. I sat there staring at the ceiling for like 5 minutes, like, okay, which one am I going to do? And what I decided was that my premise of buying the phone was Office 365, right? So I went with my main work address as the one I put in, thinking that it probably would sort of go home to mama better, right? For my docs and all this stuff. And it was a wise decision because it certainly did that. And, I could go into Outlook just like you can on your iPhone and add the other addresses, and all that stuff sort of works. But yeah, it's wired to my Solliance.net, right? It's wired to the one where I make my moolah, so that's okay,
Yep. And then we could keep talking about this for a while because that brings up a whole nother set of questions. Like, it's a phone, right? So you want all your contacts in, but now you've entered your Gmail account and your Office 365 account, and the contacts are going to be the Android phone. Like, does it pull in contacts from both, or?
Yeah, so my experience is, and this is kind of weird, right? My experience with the contacts has been that all of my Gmail contacts that I had from old phones like 4 or 5 years ago are magically there. And so like I have all of these phone numbers that are really old and crusty, and I don't see like any of my, like I'm not a really good Outlook contact person because all my stuff was like in my, iCloud.
In your iCloud. Yeah. So you have all your contacts in your iCloud then.
Yeah. So like it's that's probably the worst experience. I mean, I think that contacts have been really messed up for a while across all of these things. But yeah, it's a good point. It's not a good experience. And I haven't even like I'm scared to even go try to fix it, right? Like,
I've been there and done that and done like the VCF exports and try and put it all together. Like for a long time on my iPhone, I used to do card dav back to my Gmail account to try and get all that, and it just wasn't worth it, right? Like you're in an ecosystem, you kind of got to just pick one and live with it. And one of the things I've been waiting to see on the Android side, I don't know if they'll ever do it, but there's that cool concept of Android for work profiles versus regular profiles. You can only have one Android for work profile on a device. So I think for most of us, I know for Ben, and I imagine it's the same for you, Dan, working with a lot of customers, and I'm in a bunch of external tenants as well. Yeah. I would love to have like multiple work profiles on a device, just like I can on a computer effectively, right? With browser profiles and everything else to pull that together and make it easier. Especially in this age where we do go more remote with everything. Companies want to lock down their devices more and more. Like it's getting darn hard to like, well, for me, like I can't sign into my Microsoft accounts from just any computer, like to get to my actual like Microsoft internal email. That's go find the device that's registered, ready to go to get me in to see the things that I need to see. And that's where the value of having like the phones and things like that is. Sometimes it's like my personal laptop's not MDM'd. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that we've just created our next startup, fellas. Right? Like we need the last pass or something of contacts, right? Where it just syncs with everybody. And maybe there's a startup that does that out there. I don't know, but wow.
The one
Ben's probably tried it, and
I have. I still use it. It is
writing this down, by the way, with my.
Go write it down, because I have had pretty good luck with this. And they changed their names because it used to be Full Contact.
Full Contact.
What did they change it to? Contact Plus, or it was Contact Plus? No, it was Contact Plus, and they changed it to Full Contact.
Okay, well, I'll go try that out because maybe it'll fix me. I actually had a cognitive exercise the last time I went from my Google phone to back to the iPhone, where I would sit on the couch, and as I watched movies, I would delete contacts of people who I either didn't know who they were, didn't like them, don't care about your birthday. That was the other thing. It's like every time I see somebody's birthday, I'm like, I worked with this person 9 years ago. Oh, happy birthday! I mean,
yes. No, I was wrong. It went the other way. It was Full Contact. Somebody else bought that domain.
Contact Plus.
It went from Full Contact. Now it's Contacts Plus.
Gotcha.
You do have to pay for it, but it's like, I don't know. I think if you buy it yearly, it's like $100 a year, but it will let you sync 5 different accounts, and then it's a secure repository of up to 25,000 contacts, and it'll actually merge contacts and then resync and find duplicate contacts. And I've had it for a few years now, and I've been happy with it.
Yeah. That is one other setup thing that was a little clunky. It's not really a Microsoft ding so much as more of an Android LastPass. I'm definitely a LastPass premium user, and I love that the autofill feature, much more fluid on the iPhone than on Android. So it's not really a knock on Microsoft necessarily. But I use really complex passwords, right? Like at least 16 characters for all of my stuff, and use MFA. But this is a knock on Microsoft. The Microsoft Authenticator, with not being able to use LastPass Authenticator with Office 365, is just, I still think, is a ridiculous thing. And the LastPass Authenticator is fantastic. I can just log in, I restore everything, boom, within 2 seconds, and I have both devices function, which is awesome. The authenticator on Microsoft, I can't get that to work. I don't know if anybody else. It's like it loses the enrollments. So, and I don't know. I think this is an area where Microsoft should fix, because it's so annoying. So annoying.
Yes, it doesn't make sense that for only them we need a whole separate app.
Yeah.
Although I do think that they've enrolled some of they've because they had the company portal, right, for the MDM stuff.
Yeah.
They've started to push some of that, I think, into the Authenticator app, which doesn't give me hope that the Authenticator app is going to go away. Because I know certain MDM, MAM stuff where you need the company portal to do it. You can do some of it now with just the Authenticator app.
Yeah. You're back into the whole history of easy IDs, and that was the joke. They were never easy, and MSAs and work accounts and everything else, right? So in the case of an MSA, you can absolutely generate a QR code for OTP that will work with LastPass, and you don't have to use the Authenticator app. But you can't do that with every work account, depending on the implementation of MDM and kind of security around that identity. It ticks me off to no end. I'm in the same boat, right? I would love to log in with my work ID through 1Password, and you can't do it because it generates a non-standard OTP code, because it wants you an authenticator so it can do app lock. Either way, I've got a Face ID or Touch ID or PIN into my device, so why does it matter? But
yeah, I hear
somebody made that decision, right?
Yep,
I hear you.
They shipped it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right? I mean, shipping is a feature. That's probably the one kind of pickle barrel that had me over a little bit, and especially because, remember, not only did I say that I love this, but I also said I needed two. So the two device universe, I think, is maybe. I mean, who else has two, right? I keep finding myself going, oh crap, I have to walk across the house to find my iPhone to authenticate my Microsoft phone. Now
that's a dilemma.
That's weird, right? So
that is odd.
And I mean, I guess I could just go. But the other thing that's crud about the Authenticator app is you can get very confused of which Microsoft ID actually has the proper codes in them, right? Because I've logged in by accident, and there's no way to log out. You can log in once, and it says, "Do you want to restore?" And you're like, "Yes, restore." And then nothing works, and you're like, "What did I do? How did I?" Do that? And then you're trying to dig through the Office 365 portal to re-authenticate, and that's horrible.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Anyway. So the Duo, I say buy it. I say if you're Office 365. And that's what you're into, I say buy it. I'm a buy on the Duo. I'm a fan. It made me go green. So, and that was hard. I also think that I will regret it. I think the same way that I always lament down the line that I got out of my Apple universe, because already here's a great example. Yesterday, I went to the store really quick. My wife texted me, went to the wrong phone because I only took my Duo. She doesn't have my new number yet, and so then I had a question for her, so I sent her a message on Facebook Messenger. But it was the only way I knew she would respond to me. So, I mean, maybe Apple should just open iMessage, which they won't. So
No.
That ship has sailed.
There's no way they will. The one funny thing I had on a Facebook memory the other day is I found something that I wrote in 2013 where I said Microsoft, when BlackBerry was doing so poorly, I said, Microsoft should buy BlackBerry and take all the encryption and all the Office 360, well, at the time I guess it was Exchange Online or whatever we called it then, take that, bury it inside of Android on a Nokia, and they would actually have a phone. This is kind of that 10 years later, right? I mean, in a way. So I think it's a good phone.
All right.
I would say go for it. And I'm going to be doing more. I'm going to do, like I said on the article, I'm going to kind of do the car and driver long-term test drive, right? Where, I'm like every month for probably the rest of the year, I'll give you kind of an update. I would imagine that this white bumper is going to get very grayish, yellowish, orange here in about a week. It tends to cling hair and fuzz and stuff. So things like that, I'll definitely be sharing my experience. So follow along on build59s.com and we'll.
That's awesome.
Right.
We'll make sure we have links in the show notes, and folks can also follow you on Twitter. You're Delta Dan on Twitter.
Yeah, Delta Dan. Like to keep it lively over there. Although it is a little distressing when, like yesterday morning, I wrote an article that took me 2 hours to write about the new GitHub CLI. I put that out and I got 1 retweet, but I put out this meme of an old guy saying, "IT is not stressing." He says he's 28 years old, and I got 100 likes. So I don't know, whatever. But yeah,
well,
follow me on Twitter.
I was one of the 100 likes for the former. That latter one was boring.
It's boring. Yeah. That GitHub CLI is really cool, so try it out. I liked it.
All right. Very cool. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
All right. Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to tell you to go enjoy Ignite next week, but by the time people have heard this, Ignite will be come and gone.
Right?
No, but they can go back and watch it later.
But they can go back and watch it later. Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be weird to not be at Ignite, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. We've talked about it a bunch. Like it's very strange.
Yeah, it is strange.
I miss my conference friends.
Yes.
Yeah, and we had the same experience earlier this year when they canceled the MVP summit, right? And I very feared that we're never going to get that back, right? So I guess the world has just changed. I sure hope that Ignite doesn't only go virtual forever. I mean, it just seems so wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't imagine only virtual conferences. I think they would eventually die. I think people would just lose interest, because already I feel like there's a little bit of virtual conference burnout, because now that everything's virtual, everybody can go to every virtual conference. So I get invited to a gazillion virtual conferences, and it's like, great, let's go. And then all of a sudden it's like, I have another virtual conference this week. Like, because when it was in person, it forced you to pick and choose, right?
Yeah.
A lot more than virtual does.
It's a little bit of both for me on this, right? Because what I love about something about Ignite is getting out of the office purposefully, right? Not being in front of my keyboard all day long, and being able to go and sit in a different paradigm and listen to what people are talking about, to communicate with other folks, to have dinner, have lunch, have drinks, whatever, and talk, right? Like talk, because it's so one-dimensional on the virtual conference, right? Where someone's talking at you, you're sort of consuming it. As Scott was saying earlier, I'm probably also listening to something else or reading something else at the same time. The other side of it that is cool is there are some fringe conferences that I never would have taken the time to go, but I might be interested in, that I might watch a few presentations on, right?
Right.
Like HashiCorp. Like, I'm not going to fly to Seattle to see HashiCorp's conference, right? It's just too expensive, and it's only 2 days long. But online, I might watch, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a double-edged sword in this universe.
Do you think it'll? Like, I'm involved in a conference in a couple weeks, that the North American Collaboration Summit. It's Mark Rackley's. He's been doing it for a while, where he's trying to do a hybrid. You can come in person or you can join online. It definitely, it's going to be interesting to see how you run presentations when you have half of the audience in the room and half of them virtual.
Yeah.
But I wonder if people will start trying to figure that out a little bit more. So if you are, in your case, if you do want to tune in online, maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's free to kind of jump in and watch the sessions online.
Mm-hmm.
But then they still have some portion of it being that in-person experience. It'll be, I think there's a lot of that that's going to be interesting to see coming out of this whole COVID situation and how some of that stuff evolves as part of it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. You know, Solliance is involved with Dev Intersection, and we also have the Azure AI conference. So we actually, as a company, we have this problem. And one of the things that we are doing is we've converted our workshop days to be virtual workshop days, right? So there's, I think it's sometime in October, we're having our virtual workshops. But I think you're right. You know, you sort of wonder, like, what could the value be for that in-person piece? We used to almost all conferences have like a pre-workshop or a post-workshop with, like, you know, the main meat of it in the middle. But you sort of wonder if maybe a way to incentivize people to come face-to-face is to give them the workshops or something, you know? So, but then you're taking away virtual. So I don't know. It's hard. I don't know how that would be. I like that idea though, of being able to come face to face if you want to. But it's also a challenge for the speakers, right? I mean, the speakers are going to have to travel. You know, some people are pretty uncomfortable with that still for obvious reasons, you know? So like, you know, I would be worried right now to go to Las Vegas. I mean, we always have our conference in Vegas late in the year. And it's so funny because last year I got the flu so bad, I was in bed for a week after Azure AI last year. Yeah. So, I mean, I like had 103 fever for days. My wife was like, I wonder if you had COVID, you know, you know, because I was really sick. But, you know, it was like late November, which it could have been around. Nobody knows really. But, you know, I mean, I'm not really too up for traveling to Vegas and palling around with a million of my non-friends, you know,
exactly.
in the middle of a pandemic. So it's a challenge.
Yep. So conferences will be interesting as well. But we're going to actually stop the recording now.
Okay.
We'll wrap this up. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining with us. If you're still listening, thanks for sticking around for the whole longer episode this week. And Scott, we will talk to you next week. I don't know what's coming up. There's going to be a bunch of Ignite stuff coming up. And thanks again for joining us, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely.